The camera lights flared on, and the signature view intro faded into applause. Joy Behar leaned forward with her usual energy, scanning her notes as the panel prepared to dissect the topic of the day, the role of celebrity voices in modern activism. What I find hilarious, Joy began, eyes gleaming, is that actors, like Denzel Washington, think just because they've played soldiers or civil rights leaders, suddenly they're policy experts. The audience chuckled, but it wasn't unanimous. Denzel, who had agreed to appear as a guest that day, originally to discuss youth mentorship programs, gave a small, polite smile. But behind his calm expression, something simmered. He waited for the laughter to die down before leaning toward the mic. "You know," he said, voice level and clear, "it's one thing to debate ideas. It's another to mock someone's real-life experiences because they don't fit your script." Joy blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Oh come on, Denzel. We joke here. It's called satire. Loosen up." Denzel didn't blink. "There's a line between satire and silencing, Joy. And you don't get to cross that line just because there's a laugh track." The air shifted. The crowd hushed. Even the co-hosts looked around uneasily. Joy tried to recover. "Well, if speaking up makes me loud, I'll take it." "You confuse volume with courage," Denzel replied calmly. "But being brave means standing for something real, even when it costs you. Not just shouting when the cameras are on." The studio fell still. And just like that, the segment had shifted from daytime banter to a defining live television moment. Everyone sensed it, something real had cut through the performance. The next 9 minutes would determine who could actually hold their ground when stripped of applause. Joy tried to summon her trademark sarcasm, but something about Denzel's tone made her falter. It wasn't rage. It wasn't theatrics. It was precision, measured, confident, and utterly unscripted. "Well," she said, tilting her head, "for someone who's made millions from Hollywood, you sure act like you've never seen a spotlight." Denzel didn't flinch. "I've seen the spotlight, Joy. I've also seen young men buried before their dreams ever got a chance. I've seen mothers cry over sons who were never loud enough to be heard. So when I speak, it's not for applause, it's because silence has cost us more than words ever could." The audience, which had been laughing just minutes ago, was now entirely still. Sonny Hostin leaned in cautiously, trying to steer the conversation back to neutral ground. "So Denzel, are you saying celebrity voices should be taken more seriously than political figures or journalists?" "No," Denzel replied. "I'm saying the truth should be taken seriously, regardless of who says it." Joy interjected, "But don't you think there's something dangerous about actors using their fame to push an agenda? It blurs the lines." "The only thing that's blurred," Denzel said, "is the line between truth and performance. And today, some of that performance comes dressed as journalism." Joy looked stung. "Are you accusing me of being fake?" "I'm asking," Denzel said, leaning forward, "if being provocative has become more important than being principled." That's when it happened. The audience broke into scattered applause. Not the usual cue card clapping. This was raw. Earned. Real. Joy sat back in her chair, visibly tense. "You came here to promote a mentorship program. Not to start a debate." Denzel nodded. "But maybe if we debated a little less and mentored a little more, we wouldn't be spinning suffering into spectacle." Boom. Another silence. Another ripple of agreement from the crowd. And Joy knew it, this wasn't just a guest segment anymore. It was an awakening on live TV. Joy straightened her papers, the noise of shuffling pages a weak attempt to re-establish control. Her smile had faded into something tighter, more defensive. "So let me get this straight," she said. "You think what I do is just noise? That I don't care about the issues I raise every day?" Denzel's voice remained calm, but firm. "I think a lot of people care. I just think some confuse performance with participation." Joy raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like a personal dig." "If it feels personal," Denzel said, "maybe it's because the truth finally got close enough to touch." That hit like a drumbeat. Sarah Haynes shifted uncomfortably. Denzel, don't you think Joy, and this show, have been on the front lines of many real conversations? Denzel nodded. You've had moments. But sometimes being on the front line from behind a desk still feels a lot like watching the fire from the window. I'm not knocking the platform. I'm asking what we do with it. Joy leaned in, now visibly rattled. You think you're the only one who knows struggle? No, Denzel replied instantly. But I don't turn it into segments. I don't punch down to punch up ratings. And I certainly don't call it bravery when it's just volume. The crowd erupted. Spontaneous, electric. This wasn't a celebrity moment, it was a moral mic drop. Joy's lips tightened. We joke, we talk, we spark debate, that's the show. That's the job. Denzel responded without a pause. The job is only noble if it doesn't step over the truth to get a reaction. The producers in the booth were now scrambling, camera angles were switching rapidly, trying to ease the tension visually. But the intensity couldn't be softened. It wasn't just about two people disagreeing. It was about one man refusing to let the truth be diluted by entertainment. And in that moment, the panel didn't just lose balance, they lost the room. By now, the energy in the studio had shifted entirely. What began as a light panel had turned into a live reckoning. Joy wasn't used to being challenged. Especially not by someone who wasn't playing for the applause. She adjusted her mic and leaned forward. So what would you have us do, Denzel? Sit here in silence and wait for someone more authentic to come along and speak? Denzel's eyes locked with hers. No. I'd ask you to listen before speaking. To feel something before mocking it. To challenge injustice without needing to trend. You act like this show is a joke, Joy snapped. Like we haven't earned our place. I'm saying, Denzel said evenly, if you have to shout to be taken seriously, maybe the content isn't strong enough to carry the message. That line cut deep. The audience reacted with a mix of gasps and applause. Alyssa Farah Griffin tried to jump in, clearly sensing things were escalating beyond the usual format. Okay, maybe we can both agree that the media, and entertainment, sometimes blur lines. But shouldn't we focus on what unites us? Denzel nodded, never losing composure. Unity doesn't come from pretending we agree. It comes from honesty. Even when it's uncomfortable. Especially then. Joy crossed her arms. You think being uncomfortable is the same as being brave? No, Denzel replied. Bravery is when you speak truth knowing it will cost you something. Not just when it gets you a headline. The producers tried to cut to commercial, but it was too late. The viewers were glued. Tweets were already trending. Clips were being posted mid-broadcast. This wasn't daytime TV anymore. This was a confrontation about values, ego, and what it truly means to use your platform. And Denzel? He didn't raise his voice once. He didn't have to. The next question was meant to change the subject. One of the producers fed it into Whoopi Goldberg's earpiece, hoping she'd pivot things back to a safer ground. Denzel, Whoopi said carefully, you've spoken about integrity, about truth, what does that look like in the real world? Not just from us, but from you? Denzel leaned into the moment. Truth doesn't come with applause. It's in what you do when nobody's watching. It's choosing mentorship over microphone time. It's funding schools instead of soundbites. I don't tweet about every check I write or every kid I visit, because it's not about being seen. It's about showing up. Joy cut in, easy for a millionaire to say. He turned to her slowly. Is it easier for a millionaire to do nothing and just keep showing up on talk shows? The silence that followed was deafening. Denzel continued. I'm not here because I need to be seen. I'm here because too many people out there are unseen. And while we argue about what counts as brave, kids are counting bullets instead of books. Families are trying to survive, not go viral. Joy's voice rose. Don't guilt me for doing my job. I'm not guilting you, Denzel said. I'm challenging you. Because maybe the problem isn't what your job is, it's what you've let it become. The audience gave him another round of applause, louder than before. Raw. Unearned by jokes or punchlines, earned by truth. People don't need more noise, Denzel said, settling back in his chair. They need someone who sees through it. Joy had no response. And for the first time in a long time on The View, there was nothing left to say. Just the echo of something deeper than debate, clarity. The studio had settled into an uneasy quiet. Joy Behar, still stung by Denzel's last line, attempted to regain control, not just of the conversation, but of the entire atmosphere. She leaned forward with an exaggerated chuckle, the kind that begs the audience to laugh with you. Well, that was poetic, she said, lips curled into a tight smile. But we're here to talk about real issues, not rehearse monologues. Denzel didn't flinch. You want real, he said, his voice like the sound of a door locking behind truth. Real is what I've lived. What I've seen. I don't need a monologue when my life has been one long scene you refuse to watch. Joy rolled her eyes, visibly irritated now. Oh please. You think being loud makes you profound? I'm not loud, Denzel said, calm as ever. I'm clear. There's a difference. But the problem is, clarity offends those who've learned to hide behind noise. The audience murmured again. This time, not with laughter. With discomfort. They weren't sure who to root for anymore, because this didn't feel like a show. It felt like a reckoning. Joy pressed on. You act like I haven't been fighting for people my whole career. You think I just sit here and throw opinions? I think you're very good at throwing, Denzel replied, folding his hands on the table. But when it comes time to catch something real, pain, struggle, truth, you dodge. Every time. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Because in that moment, it wasn't just about politics or panel shows. It was about the difference between saying something, and standing for it. Joy leaned back in her chair, momentarily disarmed. She blinked rapidly, as if trying to clear the sting from her eyes. For the first time that evening, she didn't have a line ready, no clever pivot, no half-smile for the camera. Just silence. Denzel filled the space calmly. You see, Joy, that's the difference between you and me. You prepare for moments like this. I live them. The audience was holding its breath. Cameras caught every blink, every shift in posture. It no longer felt like a segment on live TV. It felt like someone had peeled back the curtain on something real. Joy tried to redirect. So what exactly are you saying? That the media, myself included, should just shut up and let people like you take over the conversation? Denzel shook his head slowly. No. I'm saying stop treating pain like a performance. Stop turning people's struggles into plot points. He turned slightly, facing the studio audience now. When was the last time you heard someone here cry without a punchline right behind it? When was the last time truth didn't get edited for time? The crowd was still quiet, but now some were nodding. Joy snapped back, tone sharper now. You're accusing me of turning pain into entertainment, but you're the actor here, Denzel. You've made millions dramatizing other people's trauma. What makes you so different? Denzel's jaw tightened, but he didn't raise his voice. Because I never pretended the camera wasn't there. You do. Joy's face went pale. The line hit harder than anything before. Because it wasn't just a retort, it was a mirror. Every tear you analyze, every tragedy you wrap in applause, he continued, you do it like it's a costume change between commercials. Her hands clenched under the table. And yet, Denzel said, pausing deliberately, you call that courage. Joy's silence didn't last long. She adjusted her chair, tightened her blazer, and reached for her signature fallback, defiance. Her eyes narrowed, her lips pressed into a thin smile that only half disguised the tremor beneath. So let me get this straight, she said, voice rising. Because I sit here, because I ask questions, because I challenge opinions. I'm the problem? Denzel raised an eyebrow. It's not the asking. It's the pretending that the answer doesn't already exist. That line cracked through the room like ice. The temperature felt different now, not heated with conflict, but cold with truth. Joy pushed back, words tumbling faster. I don't pretend. I give people a platform. I give them exposure. Isn't that what voices like yours need? Denzel's response came swift and sharp. No. What we need is respect, not exposure. We've had cameras on us while bleeding. That's not help. That's spectacle. The audience was dead still. Not even coughs, not even fidgeting. Just eyes locked on Denzel, a man who wasn't there to perform, but to prosecute. You sit here every day, he continued, and call it bravery when someone speaks louder than the rest. But the truth is, loud doesn't mean brave. Sometimes it just means insecure. Joy opened her mouth to fire back, but he cut in, not rudely, just decisively. You've mocked single mothers while sipping lattes. You've laughed through interviews about police brutality. You say you represent the people, but you pick which ones are worth representing. Joy scoffed. That's rich coming from Hollywood. Denzel leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, his voice lowering like a storm cloud moving in. I didn't come from Hollywood. I came through it. I walked past cameras and contracts and still went home to a neighborhood you'd cross the street to avoid. Don't confuse where I've been seen with where I come from. Joy was visibly shaken now. The smile faded. Her fingers, usually tapping rhythmically on the desk, froze in place. And that's what bothers you most, Denzel added, his voice a velvet blade. That I don't need your approval to speak. That I don't ask for permission to care. The director didn't dare cut to commercial. The moment was too electric. And when I speak, Denzel finished, I'm not trying to be the loudest. I'm trying to be the last voice standing when the noise dies down. Joy tried to steady herself. The studio lights suddenly felt hotter, more intrusive. Her confidence, once bulletproof under applause and production, was now slipping through her fingers like sand. Denzel's last words weren't just words, they were a dismantling. She crossed her arms, exhaled sharply, and forced out a laugh. You know, you're really good at this. Controlling a room, turning silence into tension. It's like watching a scene unfold. Denzel didn't blink. That's because this is a scene. Not for ratings, not for followers, for accountability. Joy leaned forward. And I suppose you're the moral compass now? A celebrity turned preacher? He shook his head. No. I'm just someone tired of seeing pain become background noise. The camera zoomed in slightly. It wasn't the typical wide panel shot. This felt intimate, confessional. You could hear the studio AC humming. Every breath felt amplified. Joy tried to pivot again. We bring people on this show to share stories. If that's exploitation, then everything is. It's not about stories, Denzel replied. It's about what happens after the story ends. Do you follow up? Do you fight for the people you spotlight? Or do you just move on to the next outrage that fits your script? Joy had no answer. Her co-hosts were frozen. The control room, watching in stunned silence, knew this wasn't a typical panel anymore, it had become a public reckoning. Denzel's voice softened but carried more weight than ever. You see a guest cry on this stage and call it brave. I see it and wonder who followed up with them after the applause died. You say the spotlight helps people heal. But too often, it just exposes their scars, then forgets them. Joy looked down. Her fingers fumbled with her notepad, but her pen had stopped moving minutes ago. There was no recovery line. No clever deflection. Denzel stood now, slowly, deliberately. Not storming out, commanding the space. I'm not here to destroy your platform, he said. I'm here to remind you that platforms are built to hold people up, not stand on top of them. He looked directly at the audience. You want truth? Then stop treating it like a segment. Start treating it like a responsibility. And just like that, the room exhaled. No cheers. No claps. Only a stillness that meant something had changed, maybe not forever, but undeniably. The broadcast didn't end with a bang, it ended with a wait. Joy Behar, once the sharp voice that never missed a beat, now sat still. Her cue cards were untouched, the teleprompter paused. And across from her, Denzel Washington stood like a man who hadn't come for applause, but for reckoning. The studio lights dimmed slightly as the camera pulled out for a wide shot, capturing the full tension of the space, two figures on opposite sides of a table, but light years apart in truth. Joy forced a final question. So what now, Denzel? You've said your piece. What changes? He looked at her, steady as ever. Maybe nothing, he said. Maybe everything. She frowned. That's vague. It's honest, he replied. Because real change doesn't happen in front of the camera. It happens after. In conversations at dinner tables. In votes cast quietly. In decisions made when no one's watching. There was a haunting silence after that. Not awkward, reverent. Joy muttered, "This is still a talk show, not a courtroom." Denzel took one last look at her, then turned to the audience, his voice low and slow, like a sermon in disguise. You invited me here thinking I'd entertain. You expected a story. Maybe even a speech. But what you got was a challenge. He began walking toward the edge of the stage. You don't have to agree with me. But if this moment just becomes a clip on the internet, if it becomes another gotcha headline, then we've failed. Not just you. All of us. Producers in the booth sat frozen. No one dared cut to commercial. Denzel stopped at the edge of the lights. 1 foot in the shadows now. Joy, he said without turning back, next time someone cries on this stage, ask yourself, are you listening? Or are you just waiting for your turn to speak? And with that, he stepped out of frame. The show didn't cut to outro music. There was no applause sign lit up. Just a lingering image of an empty chair, and a woman, for once, lost for words. In a world full of noise, being loud isn't bravery, it's camouflage. Tonight, Denzel didn't come to entertain, he came to expose. He reminded us that truth isn't measured in decibels, but in consequence. So the next time someone takes the mic, ask yourself. Are they speaking for attention, or for change? If this hit you deep, share it. And if it made you uncomfortable, maybe it was meant to. This isn't just a show. This is a mirror.